Hey, what's up, everyone? This video we're looking at the LOL picks for tomorrow morning slate. It's 2 a.m. It's for April 1st. So we got 6 games for tomorrow. We'll be looking at some of my favorite plays in this video. We got a nice slate, 6 games, and it's some nice tournaments on DraftKings, so it should be fun. So let's get right into it. You can drop a like down below before we get started and subscribe if you have not already. Appreciate that. If you want to follow on Twitter, sometimes I post full lineups there. It's at the DFS process on Twitter. And let's get started here. First thing I like to do, especially when there's like more than a couple games, is scroll down to the team and just to go through each game, look at which team I want to target. So the first game, obviously I want to get a lot of players from Dragon X or try to target them. It's the way it's pretty easy to just cross off some players and some teams because in LOL it's all about getting players from winning teams. They get you way more fantasy points 90% of the time. So Dragon X, second game, LNG should win pretty easily. Next game, I like Rolster. They should roll over Griffin, who's been awful. And then E-Star is one of the best and most fun teams to target players from. They look very good, and they should win. And then this game is pretty close. It could go either way. I think Genji should win. I mean, they're favored, but I won't be surprised if T1 makes it very close. And then last game, Victory 5 should really be banned from using that name ever again because they are 1-18, have done nothing except lose games this year. RNG is very expensive. Their players are, but they should win. They have like one of the highest chances to win on the slate. And then now I like to go over to Captain to see some players I'll probably get or try to have some interest in. Wink and Crying are two of the best players on the slate. They get you a ton of fantasy points. They are very expensive, but ES is very good at just rolling up the points and the fantasy points. It's tough to get to them at Captain, but I will try to get to at least one in ADC or mid. Other than that, I think Betty looks good, but like I mentioned, RNG is very expensive. 12-3 for Betty. I mean, I might as well just pay up for Wink or Crying if I'm paying that much, in my opinion. Also at Captain, I try to get up to ADC and mid most of the time. On some slates, or especially big slates, I think you can take a shot and try to be a little bit different because that's what everybody likes to do. But some players that I also like or probably try to get to at Captain are Aiming, who's been playing very, very well. Lots of 80s, 90s, 100-plus points recently since like the last month and a half. He's been really very good. He's been very, very good. And KT is pretty heavily favored in this game. And then I think Deft also, first game of the night, he looks good at 11-1. And then if I do want to get a little bit sneaky or tricky, I think you could take a shot and play like a support. The only support I would play is E-Star support because they are so good. And they have the ability to get you like 80, even 100-plus points. And if that happens at Captain, just with how cheap they are, you're going to be sitting very pretty. So that's some players I'm looking at Captain. Over at top, the first game, I like to go a little bit cheaper at top just because I like to spend up for my mid and ADCs. Duran looks okay, 66. He's not super cheap, but he's definitely in play. Not that interested in paying 7K for Flandre. I think KT's top looks good. He's only 6,000. I like them to win, and I think he can get you probably 50, 60 fantasy points, hopefully, or at least 50 fantasy points. ES is expensive. Xiao Bai at 7,400, but one of the best tops in the game. And Rascal also looks fine. Rascal and Canna. Canna looks good for tournaments. I mean, he has big time upside. It's a tough matchup, but he's only 5,600. He looks like a guy that you can target. And I probably won't get up to 7,600 for Lang X. It's just too expensive. I'm looking like KT is probably going to be one of the teams that I'm pretty heavily targeting because they are cheap. And they're not the best at getting fantasy points, but it's a good matchup for them. And they're cheap enough that I can spend up for some other spots. Over at a jungler, I think Pizoic at 7,200 looks good. XX is pretty cheap from LNG. I do also like to stack when I'm playing LOL. On these big slates, I think you don't have to do a 4-3 stack. You could do like a 2-2 stack or like a 3-3 stack. But I'm always going to be stacking. There's no way I'm going to have one-offs from every team. This doesn't make a lot of sense in this type of sport. Bono looks good at 68. He's cheap. Makes sense to stack him with the top. Been playing pretty well as of late. And then Wee is one of the best in the game. He's expensive, 8,000, but you can't go wrong if you find the salary to pay up there. And that's kind of it. I don't think I'm gonna spend up for 7,400 for that. Bono is probably the guy. Makes sense to stack him with the top. Over at mid, makes sense to pay up at mid and ADC. They have the highest ceilings. It's very rare that, occasionally you can go down and go with a cheap one that goes off, but if you do that and the guy gets you like 50, 60 fantasy points and then crying goes off for over 100, then you're going to need him to win some money or especially to take down some stuff. So I think crying is probably the guy I want to try to get to at 8,400. Just has the highest ceiling. Nobody's really going to get close to him in fantasy points, in my opinion. ADC, Wink also makes sense, but there's also other options here. Lots of other plays like Betty. Aiming's been playing very well. Deft. It's also why I like to try to get ADC as my captain because there are a lot of players that have high ceilings, and and you can get two of them if you play one of them at captain. So Aiming is probably the guy that I like a lot. Makes sense to also stack him with the other two that I also have from KT. And then support-wise, Shall See, like I mentioned, you could play them at captain. They look good. And then I think KT's support looks good. Carrier looks good, 6K. And then Life at 5,200 looks good as a cheap one. And then team-wise, I don't think I'll get up to 6,200 for RNG. If I do, it's fine, but I think unless I have the salary, if I don't have the salary, then we'll easily go down for E-Star. It was only 5,400. They have been the best all year. They're cheap, and it's pretty easy to get to them, especially since I also have Crying. Makes sense to stack him with the team, although it's not that important. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for this or tomorrow's slate. The teams I'm really looking at are ES and KT and DRX, and maybe a little bit of like Gen if I can get there because they're pretty cheap. So that's it. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. If you want to check out Twitter, it's at the DFS Process, and that's it. I'll see you all next time.